40 years. You know, that's a long time to hold a grudge against someone. But when that grudge happens to be against your own brother, well, it not only poisons your own soul, but he eventually destroys the entire family as well. And that, of course, is what happened in today's reading from the Old Testament. According to what is recorded in the book of Genesis, Esau and Jacob began their sibling rivalry long before they were born. But as they grew, they didn't outgrow it like most of us do. As a matter of fact, time after time, they just continued to raise the stakes. Their parents, of course, didn't help the situation. Many of us know the story. Jacob was the apple of his mother's eye. As far as Rebekah was concerned, he could do no wrong. And it was true, he was the most intelligent of the two brothers by far. He was the one who knew how to plan, to provide for his future. But what Rebekah couldn't see was that Jacob was also self-centered and self-seeking. As far as he was concerned, he deserved a double share of everything, and he would stop at nothing to get it. Esau was the pride and joy of his father's life. While Jacob had inherited the brains of the family, Esau had received the muscles and the physical stamina. While Jacob had learned to cook, Esau had learned to hunt. He was a real man's man. Smelled like one, too. But he wasn't bright. Remember, he was the one who sold his birthright for a bowl of Jacob's stew. He never planned for the future. He never planned much beyond his immediate needs, and therefore he was an easy target for his brother's rather calculating ways. Now, I grew up in Sunday school, and I remember seeing pictures of Jacob and Esau, and Esau, they were always young boys, right? When all of this happened, they were little guys. And when their father Isaac gave him the blessing, Jacob was just a little taller. Esau was real hairy, but obviously they weren't much past their adolescence, right? Well, read the story. Esau was over 40 years old. He was married to a foreigner. But still, the venom that he shared with his brother was deadly. For more than 40 years, this family continued to be torn apart by the greed and the hatred that these brothers shared with each other. And then it happened. Through no fault of Esau, for a change, the mother-son duo managed to execute a plan to steal the blessing from Esau. Now, please know that the blessing just wasn't someone going, "God bless you, have a good life." No, the blessing is what gave the oldest son the right to inherit everything. The blessing was more important than the birthright. Jacob stole the blessing, knowing that doing so he left his brother to be condemned to a life of nothing. But the one thing Jacob forgot was that his brother had the muscle. And for some reason, he and his mother were absolutely amazed when Esau found out and turned around and said, "I will kill him." Because you see, that was the only way he was going to get anything. His exact words were, "I will wait until my father dies, and then I will kill my brother." Rebekah heard the threat. And so she went to Jacob and she said, "You are to go to my brother's house, Haman. He's in a foreign country. Your brother can never get you there. You stay there until I send for you." And then, wanting to make sure that Esau didn't follow his brother, Rebekah went to Isaac, who was old and blind and feeble, and she said, "You know, your son Isaac, that foreign wife of his makes me sick. Jacob will go get a proper wife." Esau was told what his mother said. And so in the hopes of gaining some respectability, he set out to find himself another wife. This gave Jacob plenty of time to get away. Now, we're not certain how long Jacob had been walking. It may have been hours, but it could have been days. Remember, he was running for his life. But at some point in the journey, he decided that he had to stop and get some rest. And the sun was setting, and so he looked around and he found a stone that was suitable for a pillow, and he laid down and he fell asleep. He fell so sound asleep that he began to dream. And he dreamed that there was a ladder that was planted firmly on the earth, but it extended into the heavens. And as he watched, the angels of the Lord began to ascend and descend upon the ladder. And Jacob, he continued to watch this scene, wondering what it meant. And then suddenly he realized that God was beside him. And as he turned to face God, God told him that there were plans for his future. Now remember, God had promised his grandfather Abraham what? Your descendants will be as many as the stars. I find it amazing that when he makes the same promise to Jacob, a snake in the grass, he says your descendants will be as many as the dust of the earth. Subtle switch. And then he said to Jacob, "Remember, I'm with you. I will keep you safe wherever you go. And I will bring you back to this country, for I shall never leave you alone until I have done what I have promised." When Jacob awoke, he seemed to understand what had happened. And as he sat in the middle of nowhere, he began to say to no one in particular, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I did not know it. This is nothing less than the house of God, the gate of heaven." And then he took the stone He set it in the ground as an altar. He consecrated it as holy ground. And then he left. He walked away. Now, in her book, The Altar to the World, Barbara Brown Taylor tells us that there is something very important about that passage. It reminds us that when Jacob had his vision, when he proclaimed that the gate of heaven was in the midst of absolutely nowhere, the temple had yet to be built in Jerusalem. And without a temple, without one place that was designated as holy, the people not only understood, they expected God to meet them wherever they were at, doing whatever they were doing to make a life. And yes, like Jacob, whenever the divine appeared, they declared it to be holy ground wherever they saw God. And many of them set up altars so those who came after them would realize something holy had happened there, and they would stop and they would reflect. But you know what? They never stayed. They always moved on because the God they worshiped was always on a move. And if they wanted to see God again, if they wanted to stand in God's divine presence and receive the divine word, they would have to continue on the journey. They would have to keep moving. They would have to keep taking care of creation and each other until God decided to appear again. And then the day came that Solomon declared that God needed a home, a temple, a single place where God could live, a place where everyone could come and worship in complete confidence that the divine would be there. How convenient. Because, in other words, God no longer went to ordinary people living ordinary lives. They were expected instead to go to God whenever it was convenient, necessary, or mandated by law. And so it is for us. We construct beautiful buildings and we fill them with beautiful things. And we call it God's house. And it's the place we go to worship and study and pray. And it feels so good. It feels so peaceful. Because when we're here, when we are in this place, we know we're in God's presence. Because this is God's house. This is the place where God intersects with our lives and holy things happen. But Christians, why have we done it? Why have we attempted to confine God to one place? Yes, it's important to come together to worship and to learn and to serve. Yes, it's important to have a peaceful oasis in the midst of a chaotic world. But it's when we attempt to confine God and confine our faith to one place. It's when we attempt to build walls around what the holy is and separate it from the remainder of our lives that we begin to feel empty. That our souls begin to cry out in loneliness and in fear. And we begin to ask ourselves, so where is God? Friends, God can't be contained by our human structures. As Barbara Taylor Brown reminds us, people encounter God under shady oak trees, on riverbanks, on tops of mountains, and in the long stretches of barren wilderness. God shows up in the wilderness, in the whirlwinds, in the starry skies and burning bushes, and in perfect strangers. When people want to know more about God, the Son of God tells them to pay attention to the lilies of the fields and the birds of the air. You know, God was willing to follow a scoundrel like Jacob into the wilderness. And if God is willing to do that, then surely God will be with us wherever we happen to go. So go in peace, serve in love, and never forget to look around. For the divine surrounds you wherever you go. Set God free and be amazed at where the holy leads you. To God be the glory. And all God's children say,